Do I have to start over? Oh yeah, I can hear myself now. So I guess I should start from the top? Okay. Okay, so apologies for that, a little technical difficulty or user error, as it were. Again, we're here to update the community on the progress on the Elmwood School project since its passage at town meeting. So at this point, we're finishing the design development phase and beginning to work on the construction documentation. And importantly, what's coming up soon is we're going to start the local and state permitting process. So this is where we will meet with the planning board so that they can understand the features of the building, the features of the site, and raise any questions that they may have that we need to address as part of the development of this project. So that is what will be continuing over the next number of months. Again, we are looking at opening the school in January of 2028 and beginning construction of the school in the second half of 2025. The process, just to reground everyone in this again, is we had extensive interaction with the community, holding several forums throughout the initial design process so that we could understand what the community was looking for in terms of the school building and the educational model that they wanted Elmwood to support. We had, prior to the town meeting vote, we held more than 9 different public forums and met with several organizations throughout Hopkinton to gather opinions, feedback, so that we could present a solution to town meeting that would meet the town's educational and financial needs, which culminated with the town meeting in November and approval of the project. We're continuing to try to have as much interaction as possible, both community forums like this and also focus groups with faculty and staff who will be actually actively using the building, so that we can make sure that we're continuing to design a building that best meets the educational model.
And just to explain a little bit of the process, it's established by the MSBA. It's been around for a while, and it's part of the guidelines that we follow. What we've done is work with the MSBA as a partner to establish what the educational needs are, nothing more, nothing less. And this has been vetted among the educational leadership, the faculty, and the MSBA. They require a robust process. What you can see here are some of the priorities that came out of the educational program. That's the definition of the goals and objectives. On the right-hand side, you can see the required spaces to meet the educational needs moving forward. Next. The enrollment is also vetted by the MSBA. In fact, they established the projected enrollment. What we're looking at here is a year-by-year tracking. What you see in green represents enrollment growth in the coming years that is within 10% of what you have now and what the facilities can hold. What you see in yellow is a 10 to 20% increase, and that means that class sizes may need to begin to increase by a few students, or spaces will be repurposed. And what you see in red is a beyond 20%, and that's really showing you where you need new spaces built to accommodate the educational enrollment. Next slide. If we look forward, the project at hand involves grades 2, 3, 4, and this is important because it not only solves the additional needs of the 5th graders, but you can see it provides relief as well for the grades 5 and 6, grades 7 and 8 at the same time. So it provides relief not only immediately for an additional grade, but also for other grades within the district.
As part of the process, we looked at sites throughout the town of Hopkinton. We originally started with 44 sites and whittled it down to a select 5 locations where we developed further, ultimately ending up with the chosen site on Hayden Row and the existing Marathon site. The existing Marathon site was limited in that it couldn't sustain a grade 2, 3, 4 school. So when the decision was made that we would pursue a grade 2, 3, 4 school for the reasons that Bob just outlined, the Elmwood site was no longer viable. We continued to look at options for the site, ultimately creating a matrix that examined the benefits and weaknesses of each site, with red demonstrating a weakness and green demonstrating a benefit. The Hayden Row site, despite its challenging traffic, continued to show that it was the most suitable site for the town to consider of those that were being studied, ultimately ending up on a site that is the building as it is currently proposed.
And this is a look at the current preliminary site plan. It basically was the most viable site, as Chris had mentioned. It's a campus plan, so it's just south of the Marathon School, which you can see in the upper left. By being a campus plan, it allows us to connect the two sites, pull 140 cars and the 18 buses off the street and onto the campus. It's expected to, combined with the synchronized timing of the two schools relative to other schools in the district, reduce traffic and reduce busing as well, district-wide. Taking a closer look, we can see that the immediate site plan, the building is shown in white. It's 3 wings. The site plan accommodates 200 parking spaces, shown in gray, and an additional 60 parking spaces for overflow events, which are located over by the fields that are in green. The loop that goes around the building is for car circulation. It's open on arrival and departure, but it's closed during the school day, so that becomes safe and accessible space to play and recess. And you can see the buses that are located on the front queue up at the front of the school. Both allow students to be dropped off toward the front of the building in a safe manner, which does not cross any traffic. This is a look at the overall massing of the school. It's kind of a preliminary design, but what was important about the design is the 3 wings, the 3 stories. They're held to the back of the building, so that the front of the building is 1 and 2 stories and has a canopy that stretches across the front of the building. That's both for shelter, for waiting, and also to create scale for the school. So for a combined school, it's actually very approachable and scaled for the young students that'll be arriving. This is a look towards the back. Again, a very preliminary design. You can see the 3 stories toward the back. We've also done solar studies to make sure that we have daylight into the courtyards. Those are the spaces between each one of the wings, and those become active spaces for outdoor learning. This is a look at all 3 floor plans, first, second, and third floor. What's key here is it's organized so that all the community and activity spaces, mostly shown in yellow, are in the front of the building and accessible to the community after hours. The academic wings, where you see blue and purple, 3 floors, 3 wings, create small academic neighborhoods, and those are able to be locked off for the sake of security, but also for after hours containment of the more active areas. Just quickly, we have diagrammed how the plan relates to the educational program. There are a number of things that could be pointed out here. They've been presented a number of times, but it all starts with safety and security. Administration is located up front with good visibility, not only of who enters the school and control of the entry vestibule to admit visitors into the rest of the building, but it also observes the drop-off areas and the parking as part of natural safety and security. There are also good connections to outdoor learning, good visibility to both inspire students and connect to the outdoor landscape. And paramount in this entire design was to create small learning neighborhoods so that this school coming together with all 3 grades would feel and be experienced as a very small school experience throughout the day. Just going up to the second floor, we can see at the heart of the school, on the second floor, we have the media center. This is also where we have science, tech, and art. And we have a continuation of the neighborhood and the connections to indoor out. The school is future ready. We are thinking about the potential for expansion, so the dotted lines that are numbered 6 show that you can add on very simply to the school in the future should you need to. The MSBA requires, I believe it's a 10% growth. What the school actually accommodates is 25%. And lastly, on the third floor, you can see the continued pattern, and again, with the science, tech, and art at the heart, and in the shared zone for the school. You can see there's opportunities for each one of those learning neighborhoods to really have 8 rooms total, but 6 classrooms that are very well connected to each other. As part of the design, as it has advanced, we've started to develop the interiors. This is a cutaway section through the building. It shows on the left-hand side the entry vestibule with a secure transaction window, second set of doors, that's for safety. And then upon arrival into the school, you can see the 2-story media center. There's a window that looks into the media center. We're using natural themes, as you can see here, trees, to express that verticality, but also to relate to the landscape, and part of the theming of the entire school. As you walk in the school, you can look straight ahead. You see a main stair. You have a good sense of circulation and connection to the floor above and views to outside. This is a cutaway look at the cafeteria. You can see we bring daylight in from above. It's also a performance space. The back of the stage is also windowed to outside. Curtains can be pulled during performances so that it can be a completely internal and interior focused space, but otherwise still maintains those connections to nature. This is a look at the gymnasium. And what we see in gymnasiums is not only the tall space to accommodate a number of different sports and a variety of activities, but here too, we also try to make those connections to the treetops and to the outdoor spaces. It's all part of a vibrant learning environment. This is a cutaway view of a typical classroom neighborhood, so you can see the equivalent of 8 classrooms total, but 6 general classrooms that huddle around corridor space that's enlarged. That's intentional. A modern educational facility extends learning beyond the classroom, and that also creates opportunities for one-on-one learning, independent learning, pull-out space, and combined collaborative projects. What we're looking at now is a portion of the media center. The media center is actually 2 stories. We're looking at the first floor. On the left-hand side, which is faded, is the main lobby, where you could see the window, that tree motif of a window that looks into the media center. It was decided that the media center could be broken into a grade 2 level specific connection, kind of for the younger age students here, and also scaled environment for the media center. And next slide will show the floor above, which is for grades 3 and 4. You can see the cutout that looks down onto the grade 2 portion of the media center, and then the variety of spaces that we have here. All of these spaces are set up to be flexible. The furnishings are movable so that it can be configured in a number of different setups and also usable for community and public use.
In addition to the theming inside the building, we are also trying to create a building that is green on the outside in terms of how it heats and cools itself. It will be run by geothermal, so there will be wells drilled in the area outside the school, and those wells will be used to pull heat from the ground to heat the building in the winter, and to take heat out of the building in the summer and place it in the ground, in the similar way to how your refrigerator cools from the air in the room that it's in. This will cut energy bills and overall is a very efficient way to heat and cool the building throughout the year. I'll turn it over to John to speak to some of the other improvements.
So recognizing that this school, as Bob mentioned, is in a campus set up on Hayden Row next to the Marathon School, we wanted to make sure that we did as much as we could to mitigate any traffic impacts that would occur as a result of adding this school to that Hayden Row corridor. And we have done some studies that have identified improvements that we can make both to the existing Marathon School entrance and exit, and also how to design the new entrance and exit that will be going in at 147 Hayden Row, which is currently a town-owned property that will serve as the driveway directly into the new Elmwood School. As you saw in the prior site design slides, the two schools will be connected by an access road. And so as parents are dropping off at either or both of the elementary schools, they'll be able to connect without leaving the site. In total, we designed the Elmwood setup so that it would queue up to around 140 cars, which will pull the bulk of the traffic off of Hayden Row and reduce any backups. Further, we've done some design work to look at extending turn lanes for the current Marathon entrance, as well as crosswalks and other signage that we can put in. We're also looking at the possibility of adding a signal to the intersection at the current Marathon driveway to deal with the volumes that will be coming in and out of the combined school. There is, again, adding all of these students to Hayden Row might seem like it's going to increase traffic, but we do believe with the being able to pull cars off, we will mitigate that. Importantly, though, it will also have some beneficial traffic impacts. Right now, we estimate that the combined campus is freeing up as many as 12 buses from the current bus routes, and this is because the schools will be located next to each other, and currently with Elmwood all the way across town, you have to have additional buses. Many people might live in neighborhoods where there are actually back-to-back elementary buses coming in and out of the neighborhood, and that's because of how far apart the schools are located. These 12 buses being freed up will allow the school district to adjust routes, shorten ride times for students, and consolidate stops. We also are looking at the fact that teaching specialists can easily move between the elementary schools as they will be located so closely together, as well as being close to the Hopkins School that is only up the road on Hayden Row. And I think that's it for traffic and transportation.
Great, so I would be happy to walk you through some of the educational benefits as a result of the new facility and its design. So in terms of educational programming, the building has been designed very purposefully to establish those neighborhoods. We all know that this is a large elementary school. And so when the children come in, they will sort of live in one of those wings and establish a neighborhood feel. This really allows kids to become comfortable, friendly, familiar in that home with their peers and with their teachers. Our kids will be living in these neighborhoods, hopefully, for the 3 years that they attend the building. And this is a great way for us to be able to address their diverse needs and get kids with, all kinds of needs to be living under the same roof, so to speak. In terms of science, technology, and maker spaces, there are 3 science, technology, and engineering rooms, as well as a maker space in the building. The Massachusetts standards for science have changed since 2016. Not only do kids have to be familiar with some of those disciplinary core ideas, the ones that we learned when we were learning science in our elementary and middle school years, but now we are expecting kids to engage in engineering practices and to really do science, so that sort of roll up your sleeves and experiment. So these science, technology, engineering rooms are going to allow our school district to grow its science curriculum. And in fact, when we were meeting with the Mass School Building Authority, one of the things they had asked of us was to do a complete sort of science curriculum overhaul when they realized the possibilities that were available to us in this building. And then in terms of special education, we are moving our people to all specially designed instruction and a lot of co-teaching models. And so you can see that when you look at things like the breakout spaces, or in a few moments we'll be looking at a slide where you can see that a classroom has sort of been defronted. And when we talk about that, what we mean is you don't have that sort of typical blackboard at the front or whiteboard at the front of a classroom anymore where kids are facing forward in rows. Instead, the flexibility of the learning, individual learning, small group, whole group, it's very flexible, and it continuously changes all throughout the day depending upon the lesson. So just to talk a little bit about those breakout spaces, the breakout spaces are located in each of those neighborhoods. We may have kids out there who have remedial needs. We may have kids out there working on collaborative projects. We may have students who need to do extension projects. All of that can happen in those neighborhoods, and there can even be cross-classroom integration of students. So for example, if 3 or 4 teachers have kids who are all working on the same project from different classrooms, that can happen in those spaces. When we look at the media center and we talk about literacy and learning, lots of times when we think about literacy, we think about reading and reading nonfiction, but we now use the term literacy to talk about multiple genres. So we talk about things like financial literacy, we talk about scientific literacy, and that's the kind of stuff that we would be growing in this space. This is a space for kids to engage in inquiry, in meaning making, and all of those creative processes across disciplines. It's really nice that that is located centrally in the building so that all of the wings and all of the children have access to those spaces readily. And finally, spaces for our students who are English learners. Many of our children, I think, in the Marathon School alone today, we have about 28 different languages spoken. And so we do need spaces now for our students who are English learners, and those have been built into the fabric of this building as well. I know that you've taken a look already at the layout, but you can just one more time see the 2-story media center, the neighborhoods, the science instructional spaces, the special education rooms, which are shaded purple, and then obviously the breakout spaces, and all of that again happens within a neighborhood. And now you can sort of visually see that classroom concept. A moment ago, I was talking about how we sort of defront classrooms now. You can see that there are tables set up in that space, and kids are working in small groups with one another. They are working individually with a teacher, and that's really the notion that happens in classrooms now. There's multiple things happening all under one roof. And as those things happen, kids are really getting what they need. Instruction is targeted to the profile of the learner. As you look over on the left-hand side, what's really nice is all of the natural light coming into that room. In terms of safety, if you look at the bottom right corner, that space right there keeps all of our children, if they were in that space, out of the visibility from any one of those windows or hallways. So the design of the classroom is not only about safety, but it's also about instruction, and it optimizes natural light. There's so much happening in each one of those classrooms that is really advantageous for our students as people, social emotionally, and as learners academically. And then when we look at restorative practices, counseling, and family connections, it's no secret that we have a lot more school adjustment counselors and psychologists who are working to address student needs. Each one of those wings will have its own assistant principal and its own school adjustment counselor. The advantage to that is that assistant principals and counselors will get to know the families and the students over a 3-year period. And so when we talk about things like restorative practices and counseling, those are best served when we know the students and when we know their families. So the family outreach is another target for us as a school district, and when you allow these kinds of relationships to be made, you really maximize family outreach.
I'll be talking about the total project costs over the next 3 slides. Now, this one chart's a little busy, but it's important. On the left-hand side, it shows the square foot cost of all schools that the MSBA has partnered with since 2008. In the middle of the page, you'll see that Marathon, which was built in 2017, 2018, was below the average of other schools at that time for around $373 per square foot. To the right, you'll see that Elmwood is certainly higher at $714 per square foot. But you can see that all of the schools have gone up over that time in the last several years. It's important to note at $714 a square foot, Elmwood is the lowest cost per square foot of all schools in this current cycle. You may find of interest that the three schools at the top, Situate, Stoughton, and Dedham, are currently being estimated between $850 and $900 a square foot. Let's take a look now at the cost details for the Elmwood replacement. The top line shows the total square footage of 175,002 feet. Line 2 shows the construction cost at $124,954,689. Line 3 highlights the soft cost multiplier of 26.8%. That includes things like construction and project contingencies, consultant fees, furniture, equipment, and technology. The next line down multiplies the soft cost percentage times the construction cost for a dollar amount of $33,467,705. At the special town meeting on November 13th, the town approved the total project budget of $158,422,394. The last line shows that we have the potential to receive up to $61,527,604 from the MSBA. So to bring this all together, the total project budget is $158 million. Next slide, please. The total project budget is $158,422,394. When we reduce that amount by the $1.7 million expected rebate from Mass Save and the expected federal rebate of $4 million and the MSBA reimbursement of over $61 million I mentioned a few moments ago, we are left with a potential total town contribution of $91.2 million. The question we hear most often is, well, what does that $91.2 million mean to me in regards to tax increases? Well, today the average home value in Hopkinton is $852,400. It's important to note that interest rates will fluctuate over time, but if you own a home of that value, the peak year tax increase would be about $945. That would equal about an 8% increase from your current taxes on a home of that value. And the word peak is important. Because the borrowing will take place over the next 2 to 3 years, the tax impact to you will go up over time gradually. It's expected at 2028 we'll have borrowed all of the money we'll need, and that's when you expect to see your tax peak increase. Then the taxes for this project would be less every year until it is paid off. It's also important to note that that $91.2 million does include a $10.1 million contingency, which will help protect the town for any unexpected costs.
Thanks, Bill. So we appreciate you taking the time to learn more about your future Elmwood School. We've prepared a questionnaire that's available by visiting the website on the screen. We're going to keep this open until mid to late April. So if you watch this in the future, you can still go and share your views about this project. And it'll come to the group and we'll be able to share it both with ourselves and with others as part of the Mass Environmental Protection Act permitting process that we're about to enter into. Thank you for your time tonight, and we appreciate you watching.